about to leave, already packing. Come with me, I'm not really asking. We'll get away to a place where we don't know. About to see the world in action, what we can be, life with no distractions. We'll get away, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out, die with my own doubts. Be free with me. Let's go, let's be free with me. Be free. Not looking back, eyes on the freeway, Bonnie and Clyde, a classic cliche. We're on the run, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out, die with my own doubts. Be free.
Good evening, everyone. It's Jim here at Tutor HQ, welcoming you to our 14th live AQA. Oh, I can tell Duncan's impressed. Our live AQA A-Level Sociology Revision Blast. And I asked Craig and Duncan. Craig is in the middle, of course. You know that. Duncan on the right. I asked Craig and Duncan, what are we doing on our 14th session? And Duncan said, we're going to do some MIC. So I said, why are we doing a session on Made in Chelsea? Is that something that's on the specification? But apparently I got the wrong cultural reference. It is, in fact, methods in context. So I know nothing about that. So I'll be useless in the chat. But I'm looking at the numbers. We've got lots and lots of students joining us live for this session. I'm sure they will be right on top of this. Craig, Duncan, do you want to give us who wants to lead us off and just give us a flavour for what we're going to do in the next 30 minutes or so?
Okay, well, I'll just mention quickly, we've done research methods before. Craig's pointing at Jim for some reason. It is very confusing which way is which. So we've done research methods before, but we want to focus a bit more on the methods in context. So those of you who do AQA, A-Level Sociology, will know that methods in context, we look at research methods in the context of education and how the strengths and weaknesses of the various methods for researching topics in education. So we're going to be looking at that today. So with our usual sort of set of types of activities, but thinking about not just your knowledge about the methods, but how you might use those methods to study education, or how sociologists might. So we've got a range of activities. The live audience would be brilliant if you type some stuff into the box. Sometimes it's just A, B, C, or D. Other times we might ask you to do a little bit more. And I think we'll get going. Obviously, if you're watching on catch up, you can pause the video and take a bit more time over some of these questions if you need to.
Brilliant.
Okay, shall we
Yeah, let's go for it.
Should we get cracking?
Yep.
Let's go. Okay, so it's me first. These first multiple choice questions, we're going to be looking at how you might research home factors, at-home factors. And so our first question is, which of the following methods would you be least likely to use to investigate home factors? So if you're going to investigate somebody's home background, things like material deprivation or cultural background, which of these methods are you least likely to use? A self-completion questionnaire, a covert observation, a written questionnaire, or a structured interview? And I can see people are just battering away, sort of like in the chat box. There are lots of good answers coming through straight away.
Yeah, really good.
Which of these methods would be least likely to be used to investigate home factors? And most of these answers, all of these answers are correct. Let's reveal the correct answer. Yeah, it's a covert observation, mainly because it'd be incredibly difficult to do a covert observation in somebody's house, unless you kind of stood in the corner with a lampshade on your head and pretended you weren't there. So it's incredibly difficult to do so. Self-completion questionnaire, if you give it to somebody and ask them about their material background or their cultural background, is quite easy. A written questionnaire where they can respond in writing, or a structured interview are far easier in order to be able to investigate home factors, whereas a covert observation would be very, very difficult. Question number 2, please. Okay, so which of the following ethical issues might arise in conducting research into material deprivation? Of course, material deprivation is the lack of resources that somebody would have. So which of these might be a problem? Is it A, deception, B, social sensitivity, C, protection from harm, or D, informed consent? Which of those might be an issue there? Lots of answers coming through straight away.
Yeah.
People are on fire today, aren't they? Either that or everyone's wanting us to hurry up for the Man City PSG game, quite clearly. There's lots of really good answers there. Nadia, Shiraz, Louise, Caitlin, Zoe, lots of people coming through with really good answers. So many, I can't even get through everybody. But you are all correct. It is social sensitivity. The idea being, if you're talking about sort of like somebody's economic background, they may become quite sensitive about it. And so we might use a method where we develop a rapport. So something like maybe an unstructured interview, or alternatively one where there is not a researcher present, something like a self-completion questionnaire to look at material deprivation. Question number 3. Which of the following types of data would structured interviews with parents create? I'm just looking at the Tutor to You comment and trying to figure out sort of whether this is the answer as well. Is it structured interviews with parents create? Is it A, primary qualitative, B, primary quantitative, C, secondary qualitative, and D, secondary quantitative? That was a bit of a mouthful. I didn't think about that when I was writing this one, but that's quite difficult to say, primary qualitative and primary quantitative at all the time. And lots of people are coming through with the answer again. Structured interviews. Okay.
Yeah, so most people are right, but there's a couple of interesting
There's a couple who've gone, I don't know whether people sort of like have thought unstructured interviews. It says unstructured interviews, but it is structured interviews that have an interview schedule.
I mean, I guess structured interviews can ask open questions, can't they? So
they can do, but generally speaking, the standardized nature of them means that they will be more likely to be coded responses. So they are, as most people have put here, primary quantitative methods. So primary because they're usually conducted by the researcher themselves, and quantitative because they're usually coded in that way that they produce quantitative data that can be expressed in a numerical form. There might be a French sociologist. There may be one or two tonight. I'm not sure.
Coming up later.
Question number 4. Which of the following would be an advantage of using self-completion questionnaires with parents? So self-completion, where the researcher administers the questionnaire and allows the people to take it home. Is it A, less time consuming, B, response rate, C, it provides qualitative data, or D, could complete in their own time?
I'm feeling confident that it isn't B this time.
Are you sure?
I'm not totally. Yeah, I'm feeling pretty confident. Fortunately,
it's strange because when we write these, there's a certain algorithm that just pops up what whether it's A, B, C, or D. So it's not like I deliberately always put the right answer in B. Lots of answers coming through. I can see some people putting A, some people putting D. So there's a little bit of a turn there. There's only one correct answer. So a couple of people have put a few, a couple of answers there. The answer is D, that they could complete it in their own time. The idea being is that they have more time to do that. And particularly with parents, it's seen as being they're able to respond at their own leisure, and therefore they're able to think about the responses. It can be seen as less time consuming. However, the problem with self-completion questionnaires is that because you have a low response rate, you often have to issue that questionnaire several times. You're waiting for the responses to come back, and then you have to quantify them. So I wouldn't necessarily use that as a strength of self-completion questionnaires, but definitely they can complete it in their own time. So you're more likely to get honest responses. And question number 5, please, Jim. Which of the following practical issues might arise when investigating cultural capital? Is it A, the data produced, B, social sensitivity, C, measuring cultural capital, or D, generalizing to the population? This one we're going to get a little bit of a mixed bag on sort of like answers.
Which sociologist wrote about cultural capital, Craig?
Oh, don't do this to me.
Sorry, I'm being.
Technically, this piece of research was Alice Sullivan.
It was. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
It was Alice Sullivan who used
a concept from Pierre Bourdieu. I'll let you.
It was. Yes, thank you.
Yes. Yeah,
not Bordeaux.
Not
Bordeaux. Yeah. There's a running joke in here that I can't say French words.
Well done.
Yeah.
Someone
Pierre Bourdieu, thank you.
In there. Yeah. A few people have mentioned that in there. Well done.
Okay. Lots of people put in the answer C, and those people who've put the answer C, you are correct. It's very difficult to measure cultural capital because it's an incredibly subjective measure. We've seen cultural capital be in the news recently with the refurbishment of the Downing Street flat and how John Lewis isn't good enough. That's obviously a very subjective thing because lots of people like me would see John Lewis as being, it's nice to have sort of like John Lewis furniture. I wish I had. But obviously it's not good enough because it is different. It's difficult to measure. The idea being is it's difficult to measure people's tastes and attitudes. All right. And so trying to operationalize an idea like cultural capital is very difficult. The way it was done by Alice Sullivan in her research was that she started looking at the types of television programs and books that people read, and then made a judgment on what those books, which kind of cultural, which social class background those books would link into. But it's very difficult. That's a kind of more difficult.
That's very subjective, isn't it, to make that judgment?
It is.
Brilliant word there, by the way, from Craig. Operationalize. If you're writing about this sort of thing, it's a great key term to use there. Cultural capital is a difficult concept to operationalize. How do you measure it?
Mm-hmm. And let's move on to Duncan. Some good answers there.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, so we've got a give me 3 now. So we're going to have a question. You'll just have 30 seconds to come up with 3 possible responses to it. So what we want you to do is give us 3 considerations for researchers. So things researchers would have to think about when investigating the parental attitudes to school by social class. So if they're researching what parents think about school by social class, what sorts of things would they have to think about? Okay, so give me 3 suggestions. What sort of considerations would the researchers have if investigating this topic with parents? Okay, so we're assuming they're using primary data collection of some sort. The 30 seconds goes very quickly. So Caitlin's coming with social sensitivity, definitely. Maybe think about the different parents. Yeah, the type of school they researched from Jack. Maybe think about if there are different considerations depending on the social class of the parent, perhaps. Yeah, Craig's doing some lovely guitar playing for 30 seconds. Incentives to answers, always put. Ways to measure social class. Social class is difficult to operationalize as well, isn't it? Yeah. Whether the parents will understand the questions from Caitlin. Yeah, all good points. So quite a few good suggestions coming through. We've got unable to gain informed consent because parents might be unwilling to consent, and I suppose that's one issue, isn't it? What would our parents wanting to do it, parents might not give them access. Middle class might be more willing to because they're sort of proud of their attitudes. got issues about sex, gender, BME backgrounds, languages, other factors such as ethnicity. Lots in the chat window there. Shall we have a look at what I came up with? But lots of good answers there from you. So we've got middle class parents may well be very concerned about the impression they give. They'll have an idea about what the right answer is. They'll want to show that they're particularly involved, or they have a positive attitude towards education, and therefore might be, they might put on a bit of a show for the researcher and not necessarily give honest answers. They'll be concerned about the impression they give. Working class parents may be concerned about being judged. They might think that the research is going to be sort of critical of their approach to education or their attitudes to education when they sort of think about the purpose of the research. And there are potential problems for rapport between the researcher and the subjects of the research. Particularly if the researcher is from a different social class from the parents, you might struggle with rapport discussing these sorts of issues. Typically, but not always, it might be that the researcher, if it's a university researcher, is more likely to be kind of middle class, and they might struggle to build a rapport with working class parents potentially. Okay, but you came up with lots of really good suggestions in there as well. It's always important not to generalize too much. Inevitably in sociology we end up generalizing, but then it's always a good idea to kind of qualify those generalizations a bit, not to say that it's always the case that there'd be that these issues would be there.
I think that's a really nice kind of question to ask, really, because it's dealing with a number of different aspects that you need to address in the methods and concepts question, which is, who are you researching and what is the topic that you are researching? You need to constantly be referring back to the topic you're researching and the people that you're researching to get into those top mark bands. So it's a really good question, and some of the responses that came through there were really good.
Yeah, great stuff. Okay, shall we move on to the next topic? I think we're back to Craig now.
Okay, so one of the other things with methods in context is that a lot of the methods in context questions have a basis in real life sociology. So what I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you 5 descriptions of a piece of research and 5 researchers or groups of researchers on the right hand side of the screen. You have 60 seconds to match up the piece of research, or sorry, the description of the research with the researchers on the right hand side. Okay, so we have 60 seconds. We have a number of different researchers on the right-hand side: Paul Willis, Go et al., Archer et al., Rosenthal and Jacobson, Stephen Ball. Try and match the description to the person who's conducted, or person or people who've conducted the research. 60 seconds, starting now. And in the right-hand column, what you would do is just place A and then the number.
Obviously, you've all done education, so quite a few of those studies are likely to be familiar, even if you haven't necessarily done it in methods in context, if you see what I mean. So
we've got Basilis as marched 1D. Yep, it's a good one. Sadie's gone D1, one. Samuel's gone D1. It's a kind of seminal study, isn't it, really?
Well,
Jack has gone A4, good. E5, D1, C2, B3. Basilis B3, E5. Yeah. I think Jack was there with the first one there with sort of like all the correct answers. M. Shiraz also came in with the correct answers in just a slightly different order. But let's look at the answers, please, Jim. You there, Jim?
Yeah, they're there.
Yeah, okay. I think they do. There's no French researchers today. No. Use field experiments to research the impact of teacher expectations. Rosenthal and Jacobson. So they used field experiments. They manipulated the teacher's perception of the student by telling them that they were going to academically achieve over the next year, and then they measured what happened. Then they measured sort of like the students' results at the end of the year, and they found that a lot of those who had been seen as being spurters had improved. The second one, using unstructured interviews to study identity formation in working class pupils. This is Archer et al. You can see Archer et al. The studies often sort of like referred to as, we talk about Nike identities, the idea that working class, because the habitus is rejected within the education system, look to gain status through wearing sportswear, and that the education system's rejection of that is a form of symbolic violence against them. C was 2. Gowitz et al. Used marketing materials to investigate the impacts of marketization. It's often sometimes Gowitz, Ball and Bow, and it looked at this. This is the one that introduced the idea of skill choosers and local choosers. Used group interviews to investigate anti-school subcultures. Paul Willis. Willis used other methods as well, including non-participant observations. And the final one, Stephen Balls, used non-participant observations to study the impacts of setting and streaming, beachside comprehensive. Yeah, Gucci versus Nike identities. Yeah, this was one of the quotes that they came through with. We're not going to go to university because we are Nike people, whereas they are going to go to university because they're Gucci, they're Ralph Lauren, and that. Okay, next category. Next topic is Duncan.
Okay, so this is a bit of an unusual activity. It's called the suitcase scanner. In a moment, this suitcase is going to be scanned as if we're going on holiday. It might happen again one day. And as the scanner goes across, we'll see something in the suitcase. Now, in this case, I'm not asking you about the contents of what we see in the suitcase. I'm not asking you a question about the detail. It's looking at a source of data, and I just want you to identify what type of data it is. Okay, it's an unusual type of data, possibly, although Craig has just mentioned one occasion when this sort of data was used in a study. Okay, so we'll just have a quick look. As I say, it's not about the actual specific context. It's the type of data. So, okay, let's have a look at the scanner. I think we get 2 quick glimpses of it as the scanner goes across.
Oh. That was somebody texting me the answer.
I was going to say, I didn't know the bleep was part of the scanner. The part of the scan. It's found something illicit in the suitcase. Sorry. So what sort of data was it? We've had a couple of people saying quantitative data. Then we've got qualitative. Okay. Official documents are qualitative. Okay, so you're right. Oh, and then we've got secondary quantitative or secondary. It is a school brochure. It was a school brochure, Jack. Yeah, and so it is qualitative data. We could write. It's text. Is it quantitative or qualitative? We've got qualitative. Is it secondary or primary? Yeah, secondary qualitative. Well done, Freya. Okay, yes, so that was some secondary qualitative data, school brochure. And as Craig mentioned, that was used by Gowitz et al. To look at marketization. In this particular case, it's a fee-paying school, so it's a different type of brochure. Would be used for a different type of study. Okay, and there's Craig's suitcase, apparently. Okay, we shall now move on to the next activity. Back with Craig.
Yeah, it's not a John Lewis suitcase, though. Okay, so on the bubble quiz, there are between 0 and 4 correct answers. In this one, we're going to focus on in-school factors, and so the questions are going to concern sort of like some of the research. Some of the research considerations you may have when investigating in-school factors. So, if we can see our first question, please. So there is more than, what I can say sort of like is there is 0 to 4 correct answers. And the question is, which of the following factors might limit the access a researcher has to conduct research in a school? So how well the researcher can access the school. Is it A, their professional qualifications, B, how invasive the method is, C, their theoretical perspective, and D, the topic of the research. So what you would do is if you think A, B, and C are correct, you would put A, B, and C into the chat window. So we're thinking D. Some people have got D. Some people have got B as well. Okay. Oh, good mention of gatekeepers there as well. And I think that does become an issue there. Elspeth's put A, B, and D. Okay. There's lots of people saying D, which is good. B, C, and D. D, B, and A.
I think between them, they've got people have put all of them, haven't they? But more have gone for D and B. I think.
Let's look at the correct answer, Jim, and I'll explain them. Okay, the answer is A, B, and D. Obviously, professional qualifications. If you're going to do a covert observation, you may need specific qualifications to access the school. You may need a teaching qualification, or you may need other forms of identity, such as a DBS check, or you may need sort of like lower levels of qualifications if you're working as if you're working in the school. B, how invasive the method is. Are we going to be conducting, are we going to be disturbing classroom time? Are we going to be wanting access to all areas because of what we're looking at? And D, the topic of the research. There are some topics that schools may not want to have researched because it might give them a bad reputation. There is a way to address this, and obviously we talk about anonymity in research. And so, for example, in Paul Willis's research, the research he conducted was given the name Hammertown. Hammertown Comprehensive, and Hammertown was the town, and it's not disclosed which town it was from. So they provided anonymity for those who were involved in the research. Okay, so they're the three that we have there. Let's look at question number 2.
No, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to think.
I imagine it's. I always thought it was Dudley for some reason. I know that's not.
Oh,
that's
it might
not that far from Wolverhampton.
No,
I always thought it was Dudley, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. No, it could well have been. The theoretical perspective is unlikely to be an issue, is it? It's if someone comes and says they're a radical feminist or something, it might put people off, but it's unlikely to be an issue.
Yes, it would be unlikely to be an issue, because, and particularly in contemporary society, we don't tend to sort of like see people who are doing research coming out with very radical views about education. It tends to be more about the process of education. There aren't too many, there aren't too many sort of like let's rip down the entire education system type people left. Although there are some. Okay, question number 2. So which of the following people may act as gatekeepers in accessing students? We had somebody respond earlier on, sort of like say gatekeepers. Who might be seen as a gatekeeper in accessing students? Is it A, support staff, B, students themselves, C, head teachers, or D, parents? So who, if we're trying to study inside of the school, would be seen as gatekeepers in this sense? So we've got some people saying C and D, some people say A, C, D, C, D, C, D, A, C, and D. Okay, Jack's gone with C, D. Abigail, C, D, and A. Not many people think the students are gatekeepers.
It's hard to gatekeep yourself, isn't it?
And that's kind of the point. If we look at the answer, please, Jim. It is head teachers and parents. Support staff would not usually have sort of like the ability to allow somebody into the building or to conduct research. So the idea would be that the head teacher would give permission for all other members of staff to engage with that person. Some teachers may act as gatekeepers by not wanting the researcher in their specific classroom, but again, it depends upon the rule of the head teachers. And parents, obviously, you may need to get consent for somebody to be in the school who doesn't have a DBS check or is doing research from parents, and they may say no. And security staff on the gate, of course, they are gatekeepers. They are literally gatekeepers. It can be students, of course. That goes into the idea of being able to withdraw from the research. If students are over 18, they may be able to withdraw from the research. Question number 3: which of the following methods would be useful in examining teachers' attitudes to students? Would it be A, unstructured interviews, B, secondary sources, and I've used an example here, teachers' reports. This can be disciplinary reports. It could be reports on, students' performance, covert observations, or D, self-completion questionnaires. Which of the following methods would be useful? And again, there's between 0 and 4 correct answers. So you've got people ACD, ABC. Okay, people noticing that there's a few different responses here that could be used. Louise has gone for BCD. I believe Louise did well in a mocks or something. I heard that in the thing yesterday. Was that Louise?
Some last week, was it last week?
Congratulations, Louise.
Very good.
Yeah.
Or some essays. Can't remember which it was.
Or some essays. Yeah, I did hear. I was listening in yesterday, but I did hear that. Mm-hmm. Okay, AC and sometimes D. Yeah. Let's look at the responses. Quite a broad mix there. Unstructured interviews, right? Now, people may think, well, hang on, Surely teachers would lie in an unstructured interview, but researchers may be able to pick up or probe a little bit, pick up on sort of like body language, or they may be able to probe a little bit deeper and get teachers to reveal what they think about their attitudes towards certain students. Secondary sources, we may be able to analyze those and see if there's any forms of bias against specific types of students. And covert observations, of course, that where the teacher isn't aware that they are being observed by somebody, they may act more naturally. Self-completion questionnaires are probably less likely to be used in expressing teachers' attitudes because they are more likely to give socially desirable answers. Question number 4. Sorry, go on, Duncan.
I was just going to say, when you're looking at attitudes, you're kind of wanting more qualitative data to get that kind of verstehen, aren't you? Whereas questionnaires, I know you can ask some open questions, but you tend to get more standardized responses, don't you?
Yeah, that too. I mean, the thing with the unstructured interview there, sort of like, is being able to read the teacher's body language and being able to look and sort of like see how they react to certain questions is really important. Okay, so which of the following would be an advantage of using unstructured interviews with students? An advantage, the status differences with the researcher, developing trends and patterns in student behaviors, developing a rapport with students, or gaining insight into student experiences. Now, this is unstructured interviews. So which of those, again, between 0 and 4, just put the correct answers in the right-hand side. So A, B, C, and D. I've got some people B, C, some people going A, C, D, some people C, D. 2 A's and an A star on our essays. Well done, Louise. Hopefully we helped with that a little bit. Let's look, sorry.
I'm just going to say, remember, it's an advantage. I'm just looking at some of the people's answers. We're looking for advantages.
An advantage. And another thing to think about as well, sort of like, is think about the type of data unstructured interviews produce. Because a lot of people have gone with B. Let's look at the correct answers. Yeah, status differences with the researcher would be a disadvantage, particularly sort of like when you're talking about a middle-class researcher and a student. You wouldn't be able to develop trends and patterns from unstructured interviews, namely because it's qualitative data, but you can develop a rapport to be able to get more information, and also you can gain an insight into students' experiences through asking them questions about how they feel, what their meanings, what meanings they give to it, and what motivations they have. Okay, last question for today at 19:59.
Well, the last bubble quiz question. We've still got the.
You've still got one. I thought was going to come in at 12:30. Okay, sorry.
We've still got one more activity, but it's a quick one.
Quick. Okay. So, which of the following behaviours might teachers show if they are observed by an outsider? Would they A, act aggressively? B, impression management? In other words, they try to put on a professional demeanor. C, hide negative behaviors, or D, act naturally. Which of the following behaviors might teachers show if they're being observed by an outsider?
You can maybe think about when your teachers have been observed by an Ofsted or something. If you've been in an Ofsted inspection, you might think about how they may have acted.
I'm genuinely hoping nobody says A after this. Slightly worried we might be getting reported. But, yeah, most people have got that. Let's go with the answer. Please, Jim. It is impression management. Teachers' professionalism will mean that they look to impress the researcher by acting in a very positive manner. They would hide any negative behaviors. So if they normally target certain students in a negative way, that would be hidden because they know that they're being observed. And thank you. Some really good answers there. People getting lots of good answers there. Over to Duncan for our last activity then.
Okay, so this is a new activity for us as well, and for sociology. It's called the podium finish. There are going to be 3 arguments presented, all about strengths or weaknesses of a particular method to study a particular topic. And all you've got to do is rank them, decide which one you think is the best answer, best argument, the second best, and the least. They're all right. They're all correct. They would all receive some recognition or some award. Thinking about a methods in context type question, which would get the higher mark, if you like, which response gets into the higher bands. Okay, so shall we have a look? We've got 3 responses. a weakness of using covert participant observation to study teacher racism. So that's our method and topic, covert participant observation and teacher racism, is that the head teacher acts as a gatekeeper and could block the researcher from gaining access. So that's A. Then we've got B, a weakness of using covert participant observation to study teacher racism is that it involves deception and is therefore unethical. And C, a weakness of using covert participant observation to study teacher racism is that the head, as gatekeeper, would block the researcher's access because of the risk of revealing racism in the school. So which one do you think is the best, would get the highest, the most credit? Which one do you think is the second best, would get the second most credit? Which one do you think, although while still right and still getting some credit, would be the least? One way to think about it is how much are they in context? To what extent are they in context? Okay, again, a mixture of responses here. But I think the most... Okay, so we're having some explanations as well. Probably a good idea to explain. Got a mixture of responses. We've got one saying there, C is much more developed in comparison to the other responses. It is, and specifically, what is developed. So we've got C is the top one, A is the second one, and B is the third one from Jack. And then Samuel's thinking that C is the best one, but the other two would get the same. Basically, I think we're getting C as the top one more often than not, and then a bit of a debate between the other two. Shall we have a look? Spotting the top one is the most important thing, really, and most people have done that. Yeah, so well done. The reason why C is the best one there isn't just because it's more developed, although it is, but because it puts it fully in the context. So it finds a weakness of the method specifically, not just in education, but for studying this particular topic. Yeah, can we see that it actually is about teacher racism specifically, and an issue to do with accessing the research for that method. The second best one is a similar point, actually, and so if you actually did make that point, if I was your teacher and you made that point, I'd be kind of cross with you, because you could have added an extra bit to make it more in context. But it does look at a problem with the method in the context of education, but not the specific topic. And then the other one is a perfectly sensible, good limitation of covert participant observation, but it could be in any context. Although it says to study teacher racism, there's nothing in that point that wouldn't be true of any other context with any other group of participants or whatever. It's just true of covert participant observation in general. So that would be kind of a band 3, if you like, and the others band 4 and 5. Okay, but very good, well done. Obviously, if in an actual essay you'd probably want to write a bit more than we have there, but those are just in general, those are that's a good example of finishing off, putting it into context rather than just doing a general limitation. Okay.
Wow.
Well done. Great answers.
Fantastic. It turns out MIC is method in context is a lot more interesting than Made in Chelsea, I tell you.
That's
really
good to know.
good.
I was just going to say, there's a couple of people asking that we also did a couple of on-demand lessons for free last year at the start of the last lockdown, which help you to go through the process of methods in context. So if you go into the Tutor to You website and you look under, I think it's under exam guidance advice or online lessons, we did a couple of free lessons there that looked through, I think one was focused on a quantitative method, one was focused on a qualitative method, one was focused inside the schools and one outside the schools.
I'll tell you what I'll do once we've finished. I won't put it onto the live chat because the live chat doesn't replay. But
no.
I'll when I get back home, I'll find those links that Craig's mentioned there, and I'll stick them on the comments to this video, so you'll be able to see them in the comment section. Hopefully, maybe you get a chance to follow up on those. Although I noticed that Zoe has got an exam on this in the morning, so maybe I should get on with it and do it straight away.
Well, I hope you found this useful, Zoe, and it helps you with the exam tomorrow.
Hopefully, and of course, I mean, we never take this for granted, but if you did find it useful and you want to make Craig and Duncan happy, Duncan, as Duncan suggested, please do give it the thumbs up. It just helps YouTube suggest this type of resource or content to other students who might find it useful in the coming days and weeks, but also maybe even next year or the years beyond. Who knows? But anyway, fantastic session and wonderful answers on the live chat. I mean, really great to see so many people here live. Hopefully found it useful if you're watching on replay as well. Sorry, Craig. Yeah.
I also remembered we did a series of videos on sort of like the research characteristics that you can look at as well. So if you go onto Tutor to Use YouTube page, and there is a playlist of all the education videos. If you go in there, we talked about we did videos on sort of like some of the issues with researching home factors, some of the issues with researching parents. And so on, different things.
Again, I'll dig out that playlist and add it to the comments. So hopefully that'll be useful as well. Fantastic stuff. Right, well, it is live, and Craig's desperate to go watch his favourite team, Man City, play in the Champions League.
PSG all the way. The only non-European Super League team, I think, left in it.
Superb stuff. I'll literally give me 10 minutes. I shall dash home and post those links, and then hopefully, Duncan, Craig, I think we're going to get our thinking caps together in terms of the next few sessions to make sure that we get something lined up that's helpful. So subscribe to the YouTube channel, and you'll be able to get an alert as soon as those are live. If you want to catch up on any of the previous 13 sessions, then go to tutor2.net/live, filter it by subject, so A-level sociology, and you better watch all the videos again, and also download all the PowerPoints. It's a great way of just quickly recapping, do some revision on those.
There was a couple of people who said they've got an education paper this week. We've done 2 on education so far already, and 1 in the topic mix. So really 3 we've done kind of on education.
So have a quick look back if you want.
Have a look at them.
Was Bourdieu mentioned in any of those sessions, Craig?
I think he was. Yeah.
I believe he's playing. Centre back for PSG tonight.
No, that's Baudrillard. Anyway, look.
All right, okay. Yeah.
Don't know nothing about football. Don't go there.
I don't know.
Superb stuff. Right, we won't keep you any longer. Many thanks to everyone who's joined us live. Hopefully you found it useful. Can't wait to see you all on the next live session. But for now, from Craig and Duncan and I, well done, and we'll see you later.
Cheers, guys. Bye. Bye.